Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks, the show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we all love. I put that to memory finally. uh, you guys all know my co-host, Andrew Sides, and today we have Scott Fischer, finally. You're a busy, busy guy, man. How's it going?
What's going on? What's going on? It's going well, man.
You ready for another semester of smart school with all of us?
No.
Well, that's not what I expect you to say. Just because you got all those other side projects happening?
Always. No, but it's not that. It's a lot of there's a lot of pressure teaching in general for every teacher, you know. It's weird. I mean, we put it on ourselves, but it's like a thing where like I just want to make sure I'm giving people information that they can use. I want to make sure people are growing and learning and all that kind of stuff. And that does come with a little bit of pressure, a little bit like, all right, I hope they got their worth today. I really want to give them what I can give them.
You put it on, yeah. I guess you could. I could see that you probably like to make sure like you'd be like, oh, did I say the right thing? Did I teach them the wrong thing?
But do you feel like that pressure is more when you're dealing with new students, or when you have like returning students, or do you think it's about the same regardless?
I think it's about the same. I mean, with new students, of course, yeah, you want to get that rapport going. You want to get to know them because everybody learns differently. I teach everybody in a different way. I don't just force like this is the one thing and you must do this. I kind of try to find what's in each individual artist and pull it out to them and just help mold that and push them in that direction despite my own inclinations. As hard as it is to fight sometimes you can't help but have your own aesthetics come into play, and I gotta be like, but I might do this, but I don't know if you need to do this. And sometimes you got to be aware of this.
I think you got pretty good at that though. Like I took your class. I took it last semester, obviously, but I also took it almost 3 years ago or something. And there was like in my head I was be like, that's the way Scott did it. That's the way I should do it. But I think you've gotten you did it a bunch of times this last term when you told people like, this is an idea. This is an idea. You don't have to do this, and then like sometimes there were a couple things where you did where I'm just like, nah, but there are a couple things where I'm just like, oh crap, that's actually a good angle. So
yeah, that's how it should be. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So as long as you're willing to listen, and I'm trying to say this without inflating your ego, but at your level, I don't think I'd worry too much about if people are like, Scott told me the wrong thing to do, because I feel like the students that are in your courses are in there very specifically because we like sync up with you really well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that I'm worried about telling them the wrong thing to do as much as it is wanting to push them and wanting to get to that next level. Yeah, I'm going to show people how to do what I do. I'm an open book with that stuff, and I pretty much always have been. And I'm going to show people tons of shortcuts of how to achieve things very fast and more efficiently and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting with teaching because it's almost more about trying to teach people to see as much as it is about trying to teach people how to make a brushstroke, right? Like you've got to train your eyes. And so a lot of what I like to talk about is that it's about good picture making and why did we decide to move that arm from here to here? Like there's a reason. So it's just a very different type of learning. But I get to exist in my studio by myself all the time. I get to be a hermit and do my thing and play my guitars and mess with my art. And then when I teach, suddenly it's like, all right, I can't just be selfish Scott swimming around in his own pigsty all day. Like I gotta actually be like,
I got all these students here paying attention. I do yeah. I mean, I wish I could spend all day in my studio, man. When I get in here, it's like, I understand that feeling of being in the zone and like nobody bothers you. But, I got a kid at the house. I made the mistake of giving her permission to come in here whenever she wants.
And I was that way with my daughter too, right? Yeah. Absolutely. And daughter always knew I was down here in the studio, could come down at any moment to talk to me and hang out or whatever. That was all fine. Now she's in college though, freshman. So, Teresa and I are empty nesters for the first time. And suddenly, like, I really can just swim around in my shit all day if I want to. It's just like,
well, at least man. Well, at least I'm assuming you set a timer to get on, because your class is one of the later classes too. Most of the other courses, it's one of the things I love about it, because like I'm one of those people that's on late. I work late at night, and that's one of the only reasons I can take your class. And I'm on late at night work.
Yeah, that was kind of my theory when they asked me to pick a time slot. I was like, well, I'll go middle of the week because a lot of stuff happens on weekends, and I'll go at 8:00 at night, which I think is good for West Coast people because that's what 5:00 for them. And Europeans, it gets a little tougher. As a matter of fact, we opened up a second class this time, and we're starting it at noon. So on Wednesdays, I'm doing 2.
I saw that. You're gonna be extra tired.
Well, yeah, exactly. But one of the main reasons for that is because there were people in Europe who wanted to take the class, and for them, some of them, it's like 2 a.m. or something, And I've had students take it, and unbelievable respect because they trained themselves for like a month ahead of time. They'd start setting their alarm for like 1 a.m, and then they'd get up and they'd come to class, and I was super impressed that they were able to do that. But this will be a lot easier because we'll be able to start at noon here. For that class, which I don't know what time it'll be over there, depends on where they are, but should all work out, hopefully.
So I expect you to show up to 8:00 class awake. That's what you're gonna be like. I'm so tired. Oh, Jason Smith said,
or it's gonna be like this awesome. I'm just gonna be in the zone, man. I'm gonna be warming up all day in the early class,
and then jump from one to the next.
Parallel that. I'm also super curious. This is the first time I've done 2 classes in a row like that, especially of the same course. And I'll be super curious what the differences are between the classes flavor-wise, like stylistically, vibe-wise, all that stuff.
You might get a difference because if you I feel like sometimes I see art the European artists have like some wild styles. Sure. And mainly because it's what you're taking in, right? Like if you're taking in American comic books all day or whatever, you're going to have a specific style to that. So we did have we had 2 students in the last one. Like I remember Miguel was he in Spain? I forget where he was, but he was one of those students that was like, it was super early there for him when we were on.
Oh yeah.
And he rallied.
I think it was so cool stylistically, the variety that was in the last session's class. It was so cool to come in. I love that. And if any of you guys follow my work, you know that I've done a lot of things. I do children's books, I do novel covers, I do concept art, I do so many things, and I love all of those genres. And so when somebody comes in that's got a little bit more of a children's book bend to what they do, but they want to do D&D, or somebody comes in with more of a comic book, Adventure Time kind of vibe going on in their stuff, and I see that, even though it's not like what I would do, I'm so into it and so into trying to pull that out of them. And I feel like the last class was pretty diverse, Alan. The first class was great too. We did have some diversity, but it was a lot of people doing stuff that they think would get in a Wizards of the Coast D&D kind of book, right? Which is great. That's why we're there. But last class, it was like, whoa, this is awesome. This is totally out there, and I love it.
I feel like, and I was talking to Andrew about this before, I feel like in the last class we have, what I really liked was, because, when I was talking about the D&D course, because this is a totally specific type of course, you're like, you're going to create it's marketed like you're going to create your D&D characters or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like the students didn't have to be like, here's a rogue that I play, I want to create this rogue character. They came in with here's a character from a story I'm working on, and then let's character develop it. So it's core, it's a character development class, which is awesome. With you're not pressured to what I was leading up to was from our class last time, I felt like at least myself included, at least 3 or 4 people walked away with ideas to create their own series of some sort, and I really hope they pursue them, I have not.
And that's amazing. I love that. Being able to create your own IP, I mean, you know all about that kind of stuff, and being able to cater the course because, because it's just 10 people, people have the option of doing an independent study during that class, and they could work on whatever they want to with me. They don't have to stick right to the syllabus, and they can do whatever they want. But as a result of that, we do have people like yourself who are like, well, this is a way for me to do some stuff for my own project. In fact, there's somebody, I believe, in the night class this time, Alan, who just like you is working on their own IP. They've been working on it for a while, and even though they're not necessarily thinking about it as a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game system, they're thinking of it more like an epic Greg Manches Dinotopia kind of world. They're like, oh, let's I mean, not aesthetically, just it's
right,
but they're like, but your class will still be great because what I have to do is I have to concept design my characters for my story. I need to know what they look like. I need to be able to put them in an action pose. I need to be able to develop a villain, and then I need to be able to put these people together fighting each other. So take the dice out of it, take the hit points and the stats out of it. It's perfect for just developing your own stuff as well. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I said to you before I took the class last time. I was, as long as I can create stuff that I can use, I'm in. And I totally forgot about the last piece that we have to do, where you have to put the creatures together. Like you made a monster, you made like a hero or whatever, and kind of put them in the same piece. And I was like, crap. But it did turn out really well. Like at the end of the day, I feel like it's one of the best pieces I've ever done. So I'm looking forward to.
Super cool. And again, there's flexibility within those rules, right? I mean, honestly, I'm here to give people what they need to get out of it. So if somebody comes and is like, Scott, I suck at faces. I just want to paint faces the entire thing, and I want you to show me how to paint faces. And that's all we do the whole thing. That's fine with me, man. I mean, I'm there to really help them. If they want to follow the course, I guess just for the audience here, we should kind of break it down for them. But unlike my other smart school classes, which were a little bit more open-ended, it was really independent study. We would work on what you want to. If you needed ideas, I would give you ideas that you could work on. But really, you came self-driven. For this one, it's still self-driven, but within a structure. And we have every single week mapped out for 14 weeks. You start off doing a concept design for a character. You really start off with a front and back orthographic, where you show the front, you show the back, and you design out that armor, and you got to think about it. So, like, if this person is from the coast, do they have like wave elements engraved into the armor if they're a fighter or whatever? Like, you've got to really try to give us a sense of who this person is, just with the straight front and back. The next assignment is you take that person and you put them in a pose, you put in some kind of action that would be used in the interior of a RPG book of some sort. So it's a vignette, white background. After we do that hero character, or that doesn't have to be a hero, but after we do that character, we move on to monsters. And we do the same thing. It's the same thing with monsters. Create an awesome, badass monster. And then the final assignment is to take the two of those things and put them together in a cover style illustration or a narrative interior style illustration. One or the other is fine. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of, the whole thing sort of has its own sort of journey. But the cool thing about that is, it can apply to a lot of stuff. And I think we've seen that, especially in the last class, where people were like, this is cool.
I spent like 3 weeks just on that first part of it. Remember, I was like drawing and redrawing and drawing and redrawing until I got it right. And then Andrew here is the one who helped me create that 3D sculpt that you saw.
Yeah. For the Tiger King?
For the Tiger King. Tiger God, right? And then once I had that 3D sculpt, I was like, then I kind of had an idea. And then it's funny you talk about the hands, because like the arm, remember how many times I redraw that arm? I was just like, this arm is killing me. But I definitely, the face is what almost got me at the end. But there's a learning curve there, and I kind of remember because initially I was trying to draw it like Thundercats, and then we ended up looking at old school Beauty and the Beast photos from the show, and like, so it's kind of cool. Like, that's one thing I like. It teaches you to just think a little bit outside of the you don't have to like be like, this is what I wanted to do, this is what I have to stick to. It's like, what about you try this? And you're like, but speaking of the D&D stuff, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say, I think part of, like any cool thing, often you just got to kind of follow the river and see where it leads you, and it might take you down a course where like, but maybe you need to know that before you found the and you won't find the until you find the
That's a good one. I should quote that later. But it's like, it's good to, that's a good way to look at things, because I feel like a lot of people come into the course like super stressed out that they're not going to get the thing done, and it's like, dude, it's a personal piece, and like, if I didn't finish that piece, it would not make or break me. Like, I wasn't trying to, obviously I want to sell it at some point and put it in a book, but at the end of the day, it'll get done when it gets done. And a quick side note,
Allen, I say this all the time. For me, it's not even about quantity. I mean, if you stick to the syllabus, you're going to be producing a lot of work, because on top of all that, there's a weapon challenge every week that you can do if you want to. You don't have to do it. But as I say in my introduction to it, I would rather you have one painting at the end of that you just rocked and is your best thing ever, than you give me 5 pieces that are mediocre and you don't feel good about. Like, it doesn't, like, I am fine with sticking to that. I mean, there's some instructors who would be like, quantity, and that's great. But I'm quality, man. I want to see you put the best you can into that before we move on to the next thing. And if you get stuck on one and you got to work on it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you're going beyond the initial. Oh yeah, but that's okay because you wound up with a kick-ass piece at the end of that, and it was worth the extra work. And I would rather that than if you ham-fisted that shit out, and it wasn't the piece that you wound up with. It's important.
I mean, I finished. I think I ended up with 2 solid ones, and third one I'm still working on, but it's better than 0. Side note: Jason Smith said, "I've learned to always trust Scott, especially when he tells me to add a glow behind a character." He had the cool turtle fighting. I remember.
Oh yeah,
but speaking of D&D,
it's all about those values, right? It's all about those values. You just look at my little video screenshot there, right? You can see this side of my head because the curtain's behind me and it's a lot brighter. On this side, you got a lot more lost edges as stuff starts to dissolve into the blackness. Now, just imagine for a second that blackness went all the way around me. Suddenly, all you'd see was a floating head, right? So you can have lost edges like this if you give me some found edges and some solid edges so that when I get over here, this gave me all the information I needed so I could just let this dissolve and be cool. Values, man.
That was a free lesson. But speaking of D&D, I wanted to, I had some D&D related questions. Like when, so if we're going to, since this is kind of a nerdy show, I was curious about when you first started playing D&D. That got you interested in. Obviously, you're very into D&D like the rest of us are. So
yeah, man, D&D for me, 4th grade. So I was early. Wow. So we would have been talking. God, I don't even know what that would be. 1980, 1979. I don't know. Wait, no, I don't know. I have to figure out the math for that thing. But yeah, 4th grade is when I started. To the point, and many of you heard me tell this story, but for those of you who haven't, I wrote a paper. Well, a paper. I couldn't write a paper in 4th grade, but I wrote a paragraph in 4th grade that said what I wanted to be when I grew up was the artist for Dungeons and Dragons. In 4th grade, I wrote that shit. And at the time, it was actually, I want to be Gary Gygax, who created Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know any better. I thought he also did all the artwork because his name was on the book real big. So I thought he did all the artwork inside. And I had no idea that there were different artists in there. But yeah, man. So I was on course. So you can imagine, fast forward, I'd been working for a few things. I'd been doing Magic the Gathering cards. I'd been, doing some fun stuff. But when I got my first D&D job, and like one of the first assignments was like the beholder for the Monster Manual in 3rd edition, man, that 4th grader in me was just like, yes. So yeah, that's when I got started. And I played all the time. Me and my brother and our friends would sit around and play. And, a lot of people, I got to that age where suddenly I was into skateboarding and guitar. And it kind of edged out the D&D. And then fast forward a number of years, and I'm playing D&D now. And my dungeon master is Tony Dieterlizzi. For those who don't know Tony, that's some serious D&D right there, buddy. And that's the guy behind Planescape. And he's an amazing dungeon master, but I think it's even better than when I was in 4th grade. Like, it's just so amazing to play now and to have that freedom. And I suppose all the life experiences we've had since then that we bring back into it. It's been a pure joy. Although I will say, for Tony, he's old school. So we're playing AD&D with Tony, which goes back to 2nd edition.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's old school. That's like, you died in that stuff. Now, I've done, of course, I did 3rd edition stuff, and I've done 5th edition stuff. And so I have the 5th edition book. So a couple of times I've DM'd, and I've brought in some 5th edition stuff. And Tony's like, yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. I like that rule, like the death rolls, and like the bonus dice and all that advantage and all that kind of stuff. Like, so he's sort of adopting some of that stuff in, but I don't think he's ready to fully commit to edition.
See, I never got to. I started with 3rd edition, but I was always a player, not a DM. My friend always ran the campaigns. I just sat there. Man. I love playing, so I was just like, I'll just play. But then 3rd edition was, whatever. That's all I knew. So I didn't know if it was hard or easy, whatever. It was what it is. But when 5th edition came out, I was like, this is a little easier to play. And at first I was like, why? Then I realized it's because it brings in all these new players that they have now.
It brings in new players, and it allows a lot of room for story, right? A lot of room for things just being a little bit more efficient, a little bit quicker. And that's really what it's about. And I think as a DM, because I don't DM a whole lot, but First of all, there's a ton of pressure with being a DM.
Yes.
Mad love to all the DMs out there, because I know, man, like if I'm going to DM 2 days from now, I'm cracking the book like today.
Yep.
And I got to read that whole module. I got to get ready. I got to plan shit out in my head. If you're a player, you just show up with your dice and you're like, yeah, dude, let's go. No, man, if you're the DM, you're putting the hard work in, you're putting the homework in. And then there's pressure. You want your players to be entertained. You want them to have a good time. The other thing, though, that's hilarious from the DM's point of view is you map it out in your head. You're like, okay, this is going to happen, and then they're going to go to the bar, and then they're going to get the lead, and then they're going to go here, and they're going to get on that course card.
Never happens.
And you need to we talked about flow earlier, right? In
Yeah.
art, same thing in D&D, where to make it enjoyable, you kind of got to saddle up for the ride and just go for it. And I remember one of the best games I had with Tony. We were playing a module. It was awesome. The module ended. Everybody left except it was me, Tony, and his daughter Soph, and we were hanging out. And we're like, we kind of still want to play. And he's like, well, let's just wing it. And he just freestyled, and it was awesome, man. It was so good.
See, I'm not at that level yet. I've been trying to run my own campaign with some friends, but I'm very much sticking to the book. But every once in a while I'll be like, I'm gonna do this cool little side quest for them, and they will just test every thing I've got in me, And then there's one, like I'm just like, oh, what do I do here? And then you gotta make stuff up on the fly. I'm not that good at it yet, So I'm just like, I didn't calculate for this, like what's happening?
I know, right?
So
that's it, man. Like when I was DMing, they were going into some abandoned mansion kind of situation, and there was a door you went in at the end that was where the big bad was, right? So what do? They walk in the goddamn mansion and they go straight to the freaking door. Like they didn't go in any other room. They went into the
That's funny.
And I'm like, this is not supposed to happen. And so I had to just riff. And I was like, a magic mouth appears on the outside of the door and says, "You are not worthy to pass. And no matter what you do, you can't get in that door." And then they had to go back and go into some other stuff.
That's good thinking, man. You gotta sprinkle in extra things. Oh, Charles is what? Charles is asking, what's your character? What are you playing?
So probably the one I play the most is Clutch, who is a half-orc cleric. And Clutch is badass. He is so cool and he's so fun to play. The thing with Clutch, though, this is AD&D. So his charisma score was super low. I mean, like 2 or 3. And so he was very ugly. But, we made him like this ugly half-orc with a heart of gold. So he worshipped a goddess that was like into beauty and stuff. And so he would sacrifice things and like some beautiful things. He would smash them to appease his goddess in the hopes that she would bestow him some better looks. Anyway, go forward like this the whole time. He literally has a mask he wears sometimes. He scares children whenever they see him, beyond just being a half-orc. He scares them just because everything. So we're in this freaking dungeon, and we're fighting a fire giant, and he has a fire pit around, and Clutch falls in the fire pit so many times and dies, and then there's death saves, and they finally get him out. That finally Tony's like, "You are just absolutely scorched, dude. You are crispy. You are big. That is the way it is." So next thing I know, we have sort of like the wizard who sends us on missions. Do you know what I mean? Like we've got that like guy. Hey, you're here. Go over it. So next thing I know, I wake up in the wizard's place because I had died. Basically, I was unconscious. I wake up and I got a new effing head. So basically, they found a young human teenager head. The wizard was grafted on my disgusting baking body. So I'm walking around like that. But those sort of levels,
that's creepy.
At first, I was freaked out. I was like, but wait a minute, it's the way I've always played it. He's like ugly. Like he's got a charisma of 13 now. That's like above average in AD&D, right? So like I'm like, I don't even know. His whole world is shook. Like his whole reason for living and everything he did is like up in the air now. The other one I got, and he's awesome. He's Brett the Fist. Yeah, and Brett the Fist is just like rock and roll, long hair, heavy metal. Like he's like, dude. He talks about the party like it's a band. Dude, we gotta get the band back together. And
is he a bard?
No, he's not a bard. He's a straight up fighter. But I tell you, AD&D, like his strength is unbelievable because I rolled a natural 20 for his strength, and that gave you bonus dies. And I rolled the bonus dice, and if you got 00, 100, which is so hard to get on those 2 dice, you got +6 damage. So literally that dude can just go flick and do 6 points of damage to something. Like, how did you punch it? That's pretty cool. Anyway, I haven't had enough time for him because there's no other cleric in the party. Everybody needs a cleric. They're always like, play clutch, play clutch. So clutch is rocking and rolling, but Breath of Fist is still at level 2 hanging out.
He's like this cleric with like this beautiful face and this like burned body. Yep, creepy, man.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you sound like you got more interesting characters than I do. I
was gonna say, what do you play, Alan?
So in my one friend's campaign, I'm playing an elf, halfling fighter. I always used to play elves because elves are just cool to me when I was younger. Halfling elf fighter that's got a giant warhammer that he throws and it comes back to him. It's got a chain of return, and everyone's always like, he's got a little halfling hammer. I'm like, no, he's got like a full adult hammer, and he's kind of like the Wolverine of the group. So he does all sorts of wild, like we were fighting some creatures. They were on the other side of this bridge that fell apart. I'm like, fastball special. They just pick me up and throw me, And so I got tossed over there by a dwarf, and I fought everything on that side by myself. That's how I play him literally like Wolverine. It's like consistently wants to fight. And then I'm actually in a campaign. What's that?
I was going to ask you, is that a character that just get shit to happen? Because like Clutch is that way, in that like if the campaign's getting boring, Clutch kicks in the door and something crazy.
He's just like let's go.
Need characters like that in your campaign.
Yeah, like
all the other players can be too careful. They could be hanging back. They're like sneaking around the castle for 3 hours trying to find a secret entrance. And sometimes, man, you just need to freaking.
Well, that's what they were staring at this bridge. They're like, the bridge is down. Maybe we should build a rope and go across. I'm like, just throw me. Let's go. Like, yeah. And then only one guy in the group knew what a fastball special was. So I'm like, let's go, man. But then I'm in a campaign now with some artists from Rusty. And I'm playing a bard for the first time, a halfling bard. And I never played bards. I'm trying to work my way up to it. I do occasionally sing. I speak in a sing-song fashion once in a while, but they want me to sing when I do the bardic inspiration. And I'm just like, I'll get to it, man. It's super stressful. So what I've done right now is I made a playlist of songs, and then I'm gonna play it because I feel like if I can hear the song, I can sing to it real quick. But randomly singing is hard, man.
Overthinking this, buddy.
Oh.
Yeah, I might be overthinking it, but like in my head, I was like, here's the song I'm thinking of. Like I walk in a room, I was thinking like Super Bon Bon by Soul Coughing, right? And I'm just like, that's the song that I'm hearing in my head. But like singing it is like no one's ever heard that song, so it's like. I got to work up to it. Bard is something I've never played. I'm dual classing, but I'm not going to tell you the other class yet because it's a secret. But so it's kind of fun because I'm playing with artists as well. So they all have. I think the best D&D I've played right now is like like I love my other friends and I play with them, but they're all very specific on how they play. But playing with artists is like all your imaginations are like I can't even describe it. Everyone's going the whole time, and it's like. You get some wild results from the group.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like left field results. Like you're like, they didn't calculate it. They didn't think it through. They just did it because that's what their character would do.
That's exactly right. What about voices? You do.
Yeah.
You got voices?
We're building up to the voices. A couple of us have a solid voice. Like Ben is in there. Ben's got a good voice for his character.
What does Ben play? What does Ben?
Yeah, he's a bard. Ben, if you're watching, type it in. He's also a bard. I'm trying to remember. A furblog? Furblog? Is that how you say it? He's like 8 feet tall. Yeah. To my character, my character's 3 feet tall. I primarily the last thing we had to do at one point, I was just riding around his shoulder like an ant. Like I just climbed up there and sat there. So I'm like, all right, I guess this is happening.
Have you watched the Critical Hit animated show that's on now? Das Machina, I think.
Oh, Vox Machina, Critical Role. Yeah. Oh yeah, I cooked through that thing as soon as it came out.
Oh my god, that's basically our campaign. We were watching that, and I was just like, "Oh my god, that was so good." So dude. I don't know what you thought, but I
loved it. I mean, I listened to that first campaign when it was live. Sure. So to get it like a visual of what these characters look like was awesome. I'm hoping they do the same thing to campaign 2 because campaign 2 is amazing. What did he say? Oh, Charles said Brett the Fist sounds like Scott. Thanks for watching, Charles.
Pretty much Brett the This voice is my voice. That's exactly right.
And that's kind of how that's exactly how I'm playing. Like the way I talk, the way I act with my current character in the campaign. I mean, Claire's actually our DM. I'm in Claire's campaign. I play just like the way, like the attitude is my attitude. It's very much like if anyone's ever had a conversation with me and you're like, oh, Alan just a straight shooter. That's exactly how I'm playing this character. He just says what he wants, does what he wants.
You would absolutely hate me in the party.
I probably would.
It's been years since I've played, but I tend to be characters where I stack like an ungodly amount of points into one stat, and everything else is just utter shit. Like the last player I did was a Dragonborn, I think barbarian or something. Crazy strong, could not hit the broadside of a barn. But if he did, it would obliterate it within yeah. Otherwise, though, like not a glass cannon. It's like whatever the equivalent of that is for someone where it's like can't hit anything, but if it lands, it kills you instantly. And he died.
He died.
He died. He died because he was swarmed by millions of spiderlings, and they just like impossible for him to hit because it's like millions of tiny things crawling all over him. Just basically went into, if I remember right, went into his body and basically puppeted him like a little corpse afterwards.
That's disturbing.
That's rough, man. That is very rough. You know, I think. Well, does Claire do voices? That's a good question.
Yeah, she does.
Like, does she has multiple voices for?
She has multiple voices. She does amazing voices. She's also like her and Ben. I think have been playing forever, whereas I stopped playing for a number of years because school and college and all that, and then I just started playing again a little bit before the pandemic stuff started happening. So it's like, you know, but I feel like this group, they're all my friends, so I should just be comfortable doing a voice. I should just be comfortable singing and not. I'm like, I think I get in my own head about it, but you shouldn't, right? You just do it, and then.
I get it because Clutch, the half-orc cleric, he sings a lot, and he's not even a bard. Like, but he sings.
That's awesome.
He got known for singing. He started singing, and then suddenly, like the DM was riffing on that, and he's such a terrible singer because he has such a low charisma but he would roll dice to see what people thought, and the early dice were so positive in response that Clutch kind of became a rock star amongst the borderland, and people know him, and so now what happens is the other players are like, wait, Clutch wouldn't just say that, Clutch would sing that, and I'd be like, oh shit, and I'd be like, all right, Clutch has to recap, and go like, went to the dungeon and it was awesome, and I just kind of throw it out with a little vibrato here and there, Alan, but there's no like.
Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like, cause like my group, they've been like, "Can you sing that to me?" And I'd be like, "Maybe I'll try it next week." Like, I have to because I feel like as a bard, but it's still like I don't want to screw up the song.
Or you can pick up your guitar and you could just play that guitar for.
I thought about that too, right? Just strum a couple chords with the guitar, and then just get there. That's my inspiration. Good luck, but we'll see. It's all like at this point, I'm running my own campaign with the one group of friends, and then the other group runs one, and I play with them, and then I'm playing an artist one. But the one I'm running myself, like you said, being a DM is super stressful because you do like one thing wrong, and then you're like, they can see it on your face too. When you're like, that's not supposed to happen. Like, right. Like I try to like hurt them in a direction, and then I can. Like this one group takes really good notes because they'll be like, oh, well, he mentioned this before. And I'm like looking through my notes like, I did? Like, I don't remember this part. Like, what did I say? But I've got, what it has led me to is a cool side project. I'm working on my own idea for some D&D like journals because I realize that as I'm playing, I take notes a specific way. Dude, I've seen some notes from other players and some notes are wild. I'm like, man, how do you write so fast? Like they have like pages of notes, and I've got like bullet points of notes, right? Just specific things I should remember. But yeah, I was also going to ask about, you ever think about in the class having having them create a character sheet for their character just for funsies? Like
Well, like I in the first assignment when I lay it out in the syllabus, I do say you can roll up a character if you want to. Absolutely, they could do that. I don't think I think it's one of those things where like yeah, man, if they want to roll up a character and then have to draw that character, I think it'd be fantastic, man. That would make it even better. Then if they start playing that character, what is it?
Yeah.
Art imitating life, life imitating art, but D&D isn't real life. So what are you imitating? I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I was thinking it from perspective of like if like it might help them create that character a little easier if they knew like this guy's very charismatic or this guy's very strength is super high, so it's super built or whatever. But
I think
yeah, I
that's
mean,
a super
also
great idea. Maybe I should hammer it a little more in the opening class next week. I'll be like, you guys should all roll up a character. You oughta. Why not? If you don't have something you already want to do, just
anybody watching, don't hate me for that suggestion, please.
Well, here's the
I
thing, right?
mean
The
well.
thing
I mean well.
as everybody knows who plays. When I was in fourth, we tried to stack everybody at like 18 for every stat. Man,
Yeah.
Clutch had like a charisma, and it made him so fun to play because you got to operate within those limitations, and those limitations often
Excuse me.
really define who you are as a character. And let me just dovetail that shit right back into art, because I'll tell you this right now. Sometimes in art, it's the things that you can't do that actually help define who you become, right? And your weaknesses wind up becoming just as strong as your strength, because you overcompensate for your weaknesses by doing something, right? So it's weird to think about it like that. But the prime example of this would be Mike Mignola. We're talking Hellboy here, and I remember hanging out with Mike, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, man, how did you come up with your style, Mike? That black and white. I mean, how did you come up with your style? That question that all artists hate to get. I threw it right at Mike Mignola, and he's all like, the reality is, I couldn't draw that shit, so I started covering it up with black. Like, so that's like, you don't think I wanted to draw like,
Right.
Walt Simonson or whoever he was influenced with at the day? He's like, that just wasn't my wheelhouse. So I started doing it this way, and it kind of became my thing.
I think it's brilliant.
We can't have good draftmanship. We still got to know how to draw the things we do very well, because if you can't draw the other stuff, then you better be really good at the stuff you can draw.
Side note, my goal is to have Mignola remember my names every time I see him, because he's across from me at San Diego, and he can never remember my name, and I'm just like, come on, man, just once, throw me a bone here, dude. Like, make my life. But yeah, obviously Mignola is a huge influence on my style.
Sure. Me too, though people wouldn't see
Yeah.
it, and I tell painters where I'm like, you guys need to study Mignola. You need to study him. I don't care if you paint like Donato. You need to study Mignola, because Mignola will teach you about composition and how to frame
Oh
things,
yeah.
using dark things behind light things, and all of that stuff that he does so well, and the stacking and the overlapping. That applies to oil paint. It applies to digital color. It applies to everything.
I mean, I remember you told us about his, how he puts the one big shape behind the characters on almost every piece, and I never noticed that until you pointed out in class one day, and I was like, holy crap!
Diagonal right? And here's the thing: I didn't know. I have studied his work. I got his art books on my wall right here, right? And I looked at forever. And he was a guest at Illustration Masterclass, and suddenly it came up, this diagonal of light thing, and suddenly I'm looking at him like, oh my God, he does a diagonal of light quite often coming across the composition. But the crazy thing is that I never noticed it. Because everything that's going on within that composition is so interesting and so nicely layered and so nicely composed that that it was just genius that he could have that diagonal of light, yet it felt fresh every time.
Yeah, I was like, I remember after learning that, when I looked through the books, I'm like, holy crap. It's a brilliant, it works perfectly for his stuff.
A really good excuse me, a really good compendium with those is have you ever looked at the Art of Atlantis art book, or any of the stuff from that Disney book? Yeah, because like, they broke apart Mignola's style for that movie. Like they had scores of like concept art and stuff, just trying to figure out how the hell he constructed pictures and like how he translated all that stuff, until eventually they hired him on, I think for like a week or two, to just come in and be like, hey, can you just show us some of this stuff? And he saw it all, and he's like, this is weird. This is so weird to see like all my style like thought out and like
Like they're analyzing
annotated
you.
it, and yeah, analyzed and annotated and put to paper. But those notes, like in conjunction with Mignola's, with just looking at Mignola's stuff alone, like you're like, oh wow, I get it now. I see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
100%. Yeah.
I'm gonna shift us away from Mignola for a second here. I was gonna talk about some of your other hobbies. Obviously, you love guitars. I see one hanging on the wall back there. Is that a new one?
Mm-hmm.
That is not a new one. That is
Dude,
an
is that a
Ibanez
Gresh next to it? What's next to it?
That is a. So wait, where are you looking? So right here is
That's an
that
Ibanez.
is a Rickenbacker. That's
Oh,
a
okay.
Rickenbacker Ibanez.
Yep.
Now then, the thing is, Alan, like I got that. Now, cool story about that one is that my nephew gave it to me. He got it at an auction in the middle of Indiana for like $60, and he had it for years. And I was like, "Oh my god, I want it!" Because that's an expensive bass, even though it's not a Rickenbacker, it's an Ibanez copy. It's still an expensive bass. And then Christmas ago, he just gave it to me, like it was under the tree. And I'm like, "Yes! Oh my god, that is like the go-to bass." But here's the cool thing: is it wasn't enough for me to have the bass. I had to track down the guitar, so we actually got the 4-string and the 6.
Nice.
Man,
That's beautiful. So
but this
jealous.
too, this is another copy. So it's a Japanese lawsuit copy. They call it lawsuit guitars because they were copying them.
Yeah.
And, but they're of exceptional quality, and I just love vintage Japanese guitars, vintage Japanese cars. I don't know. I love all that kind of stuff. But yeah. An obsession, my friend.
You got way more than I only have 2 guitars. Dude, I had 6 at one point.
I think I might be over 50 now.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Are they all down there somewhere?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. Sweet Jesus. Oh, that's awesome. Now you got a nice little studio over there to play in.
Yeah, that's where I sit around and play, and then there's a whole wall of them there. There's like 12 on the wall there.
Super jealous of that.
And it's amazing. But here's the thing, and I know it's kind of baller when you're like, I got 50 guitars. I'll tell you what though, it's because they are a hobby, and I buy and sell guitars. So and it's easier than you think. So basically, you find a great deal at a flea market guitar. You pick the thing up for $50. You know it's worth $200. You sell it on Reverb, which is a whole site dedicated to this stuff, or eBay if you want to go that way. Mm-hmm. You take that money, you buy more cheap guitars, you flip the guitars, you go back and forth, you go, suddenly you got 50 guitars, and the guitars pay for the guitars. That's the crazy thing about it. So yeah, I maybe have 50 guitars here, but half of them are up for sale when I want to sell them. You know what I mean? So like, and then I just roll it back into the guitars. Here's the good news for all of you out there with a partner who's like, you can't have 50 guitars. What's wrong with you, dude? If the guitars pay for the guitars,
it's just cycling.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a Epiphone Goth, which is my main electric, and then I have a Ovation.
SG or the Les Paul?
The Les Paul version? I can go get it if you want to see it. Give me a second.
Does it have the 2 horns like this, or the
No, it doesn't. No, it's just one horn.
There you go. So it's Les Paul. Nice.
So I got that off a friend years ago, and I had 6 guitars, and I sold them all. Well, I needed the money at the time, so. But I was like, I gotta keep at least one acoustic and one electric. So I did have this amazing Jackson 7-string that had a drop D tuner on it. That thing was clutch, but it just a drop D tuner can really make or break that fretboard, and I think I broke it. So. Plus, it's a 7-string, which I didn't train on a 7. I trained on a 6. So that extra string was throwing me off for a while. But I had this like wanting to, I grew up learning a lot of punk bands, which you and I think have a similar interest in punk bands. When you said punk and skateboarding, I was like, that's my life. That's how I grew up, And then I have a friend.
Me, it was more 80s heavy metal.
Yeah, so I have a friend who was into like metal music, and that's how I got into metal.
Yeah,
and then that was his Jackson. He has it back now. I basically sold it back to him for an airbrush.
Yeah, not a bad deal. And the thing is, here's the thing about the guitars, Alan. Right, like because I was into old BMX. Anyway, what happens is you start to get 40, 50, and then you start wanting to relive your childhood. So suddenly I was buying old BMX from the 80s. like old BMX bikes. And old dudes like me would buy them for you. You get the right bike, it's worth $1,000. A BMX bike from the 80s, right?
Hey, you want an old GT dyno? I got an old GT dyno in the garage. I'll ship it to you.
I'm telling you, man, you don't need to ship it to me. You need to sell that stuff. For that, you go to BMX Museum and you sell it. You'll make some money on that. But they were a pain in the ass. And I got into banana seat bikes. I've been into
my God.
Oh, yeah. Bikes. And then I was into old Datsun cars, and I still have a few of them around. And they're awesome, but man, they take up a lot of room. They're messy to work on. Guitars, dude, they don't take up much room. They're easy to work on. I had like 12 bikes and I didn't even ride bikes. You know what I mean? Like I was like, what is this? Makes no sense. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So with a guitar, I have an excuse because I record the soundtracks for my art videos.
Yeah.
So now they're tax write-offs. So ooh, yeah, all right. So we can write that shit off now. And yeah, they're great. So you buy them cheap, you fix them up, you flip them, you buy more, and you can work your way up to very expensive guitars. Last year, I bought a birth year guitar, 1971 Fender Stratocaster.
Ooh.
Dude, it was a lot of fucking money. But all of that money came from selling guitars. And if I go all the way back, in the early 2000s, I was buying these, they would be sold at like department stores, but these Tyco Del Rey guitars, which were very cheap guitars. And I was buying them, in 2005, 6, 7, in that range for like $50. Well, all of those like quadrupled in value in the early teens. So I sold them. And then that's sort of what refunded the whole thing. So if you think about it in that respect, everything I have here snowballed from like a couple $100 worth of guitars. It all just snowballed.
That's awesome. And that was also Scott's pitch for the next 20 guitars he's about to buy.
Exactly. Well, dude, it got bad because then I found out about Japan and Yahoo Japan, which is eBay in Japan.
I'm writing all these down just so you know.
Dude, Yahoo Japan. And the thing about that is that in Japan, certain guitars don't sell for as much as they would here. It's so funny. This whole art thing is turning into a whole like guitar lesson thing. But I suppose that's about the ebb and flow, right? So, dude, if you look at like,
he's gonna play for us, guys.
So if you look at these machines right here, dude, these are 1980s Charvel guitars, right? Ooh, basically, or Fernandez guitars. Okay, so these guitars, first of all, one pickup, one knob. I'm really into simplicity these days, and I'm really enjoying it. They're just so simple. So I've got a number of these guitars. Here's the thing: in Japan, I picked up this guitar for like $150. In the States, this is a $700, $800 guitar. Yeah. So I ship them over from Japan. Now I sell them here and I buy more guitars. So there you go. I think that could apply to anything you want, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like if you know it, you can figure it out and you can turn it into something cool like that. That's what I think. I also think that, as is evidenced by these 80s guitars going up in value so fast, those guitars in the States were like $300-$400 like 4 or 5 years ago, right? It's just everybody my age is hitting 50. They hit 50
behind guitars.
And I wanted to be on the Sunset Strip in LA. I wanted to be a rock star. Let me buy that guitar. And they go buy it. It's funny.
I mean, I remember I know, so you know the band, what's his name? The White Stripes, Jack White, right?
Jack White. Yeah.
So he's got a guitar that looks like a Gresh, and it is not a Gresh. It's a custom built guitar. And a friend of ours, his uncle is the guy who built that guitar. Like his company does custom guitars.
Oh, wow.
And I contacted them because I was like, I would like a Gresh and I would love this custom Gresh. So it's like my own, it's unique to me. And I was like so ready to buy this thing. And it was like, I can't remember now, it was like $6,000 or $8,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's when I realized custom guitars are super expensive. But because you can get a Gresh for like, I can get it for $800 if I just want the Gresh itself. But
exactly.
I'm gonna get a Gresh. That's my goal.
And I think we've seen it crawl like crazy, especially during the pandemic, because what happened with guitars during the pandemic is everybody was home and everybody was sitting around. They had expendable cash because they weren't blowing it out on movies and bars or whatever. So they were buying guitars, and the whole guitar market went. The used guitar market was crazy, and now we'll see what happens as they all go back to, everybody like goes back to their office and suddenly they're not playing anymore and they're
selling their guitars. That's when you come in.
That's selling where I come in, right?
And you come in, you're like, I'll take that off your hands for you. I got no problems here. I got you covered.
you're seeing these prices that are pretty insane. Gibsons are 10 grand these days if it's like the limited
Man,
edition crazy.
that's why I have the
Good
Epiphone,
Lord.
man. I could not afford an actual Gibson. It's too expensive.
That's why you sell the Epiphone. You make a little profit on it. You buy another guitar, you sell it, and then you work your way up to it.
The Goth isn't worth that much, though. I think it's only worth like a couple $100, probably $500.
All right.
And the thing is,
$500?
I have a hard time selling it because that was my first. That's the guitar I had when I used to have a band when I was younger. That's like it's got like nostalgic
Sentimental value.
Yeah, sentimental value to it, right? It's hard to get rid. But the Jackson, I was just like, I can get rid of this thing.
I totally get that. I still have my purple Ibanez from 1980 over there on the wall that I bought. I worked all summer for it. I bought that thing. It's still sitting on the wall, and it's one that, of course, I will never sell. Yeah, dude, that's exactly it. That's how we do it. That's how we follow these hobbies, and also they bleed back into each other. So, to bring this sort of back to art, I started painting and drawing on these guitars, right? And I would just have a cool guitar.
That's what I was going to ask you about those.
Yeah, and then I'd flip them. I don't have any here right now because they've all sold. So that's an interesting part of it too. So like suddenly like I can take that Gibson, I can put art on it, and I can sell it for $800 more than I could normally, right? So suddenly it becomes this thing that is super cool, and I love those custom guitar things and custom paint on guitars. And so it's great to do that, and then that kind of dovetails into your own IPs and stuff and things that you're working on. I think I am perpetually a 14-year-old that I was. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm always that age. Those things that I love: D&D, skateboarding, heavy metal. Those things I keep on returning to, and you wind up kind of that bleeds itself back into your art in interesting ways. So I've pitched a couple of things, Alan. I was talking about a show I did that was robots, and it was robots beating the shit out of each other, basically. And I based it on at the time I was hot rodding old 1970s Japanese cars, but I made them look older. But it was so cool and so fun. Actually sold it to Cartoon Network, which was awesome, but they've shelved it, so I don't know if it'll ever actually come out. But you never know. Could come out. And you never know. But that sort of was like the start of the trifecta. The next show I worked on was heavy metal, and it was basically take the 80s metal scene in LA and then add Pokemon ghost scary adult crazy stuff to it, and then like devils and all that kind of stuff. And that was the next thing I pitched, and I went out with that thing, and nobody bought it, but I got to talk to a lot of cool people. And then the next one I wanted to do was a D&D one, right? So that was going to be the next thing. It was oh, I'm doing a D&D show. And then freaking
Vox Machina.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's pretty much what I was going to do.
Yeah. It's hard to top that show.
Yeah.
That's like, it's funny when I hear stories like that, because like I remember I had a friend who was starting cartooning, and he was like, he put his heart and soul into it. And then South Park came out. And he's like, "Fuck it, I'm done." like I can't believe that these guys do they were using software that could go up to 100, but they would use it at like 20% capacity, and they're making these. And at that, when it first started, it was just paper, right? But he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "I can't compete with this," and I'm just like, "Wow, that's all it took to break you, huh?"
Right.
Resolve.
That's it.
Gone. So I was like, all right, man. But yeah, Vox Machina it's done so well. Like I felt like people were gonna have a hard time relating to those characters if you didn't like watch the thing live, but they did such a good job of character building on that show, and you're just like, oh wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, like, once I get around to it. I have it on backlog for myself.
Oh, you're gonna want to put some time aside, because it's hard to like watch one episode and walk away.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. It's like I never got into the Critical Role campaigns myself. Like I watched a little bit of the Vox Machina one, or the Vox Machina one, but yeah, never.
So that one was like the earlier one is like it's not bad, but when I started watching Critical Role, I was always told start on campaign 2, and that's what I did.
I popped into campaign 2, and I liked that one a little bit more. It's still. I think for me, it's just I bounced off it hard. It's like I think it occupies the same space in my head with like audiobooks are, where audiobooks I can hear it, and you ask me 20 minutes later how the book is, and I'm like, oh, I fucking don't know. I think I heard it.
I don't listen to audiobooks when I'm working. I can't.
It's the same way. It's the same way with like just listening to D&D campaigns. I've tried a few times, a few different ones, and it's like the same kind of thing that just happens to me.
Gotcha.
Like I just can't absorb it at all, which is a shame
Yeah.
because like it sounds interesting, and like the little clips I've seen where you know like the critical role will take out like a 45-second clip or whatever. I find those really enjoyable, but yeah, like if I'm just listening to a campaign for like 4 hours or so,
Yeah,
my
they're
brain
long.
just kind of goes, yeah, my brain goes, okay, we're not playing. You don't have to worry about this. It's fine. Wait until someone calls your name. That never happens.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny the things we do while we're working. I'm usually a music guy. Like if I'm making
Yep.
art, I'm usually listening to music. The problem is, I mostly metal stuff, and the problem is now, of course, it just Spotify. I don't even know what bands I'm listening to anymore because I'd have to stop but looking at my art and come over and look. Oh, what band is that?
Oh,
And
you
I
gotta
gotta
make
read it.
playlists, man.
Yeah, well, see, I just hit the go
Yeah,
button,
you
right?
hit and
Like or
go.
Yeah.
your weekly roundup, or I listen to an album and then at the end
Yep.
it just starts automatically doing stuff. So I've tried to like I have friends who can run movies in the background and work, and
Can't
I
do
could
that.
not do that. I get distracted.
I keep
tried
wanting to
watching
watch the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So I did start doing the podcast thing a little bit, and I didn't listen to much Critical Role, a little bit of it, but I was really listening to the Adventure Zone guys, the brothers,
Yep.
the three brothers and the father.
Yeah.
And the first adventure was all D&D, so I was into it, right? It was now they've moved on and they're into different game systems now, and it's more of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of stuff. Because I'm still a couple back
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the thing. I was able to work to that because I could work and they'd be talking, and I found myself being able to work it. My wife Teresa, also an amazing painter, she listens to documentaries all the time, like usually music documentaries about Bowie or whoever, and that's what gets them through it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because everybody kind of has their different thing they do.
Yep.
What do you do, Alan? You music?
I have a playlist that I listen to. Mainly, I have a wild playlist. Is like thousands of songs. Like any song that I like is in that playlist. So almost any
random.
song that it's very random, but any song that comes up in there, I'm not gonna like be like, ugh, skip,
Right.
And yeah, there's like it can go anywhere from like AFI to like Motley Crue to like the Eagles to even Taylor Swift is in there because I think she's a good singer. But I have that list is like kind of when I'm just like thumbnailing and coming up with ideas. But then when I'm actually sitting down to work, I have a specific like punk playlist that I play, and I know the songs that are coming up in there, and I can just play along. But then when I'm doing like, that's the playlist I play when I'm playing the colors. But when I do like the actual like focused like work, I got to get the arm right or the head right. I have a soundtrack playlist that I play, and
Yeah,
I do that on purpose because you can't sing along to the music. You have to just
Right.
listen to it. And it's very much like it's got like like the Batman soundtrack, Neverending Story. It's got like all sorts of like just all instrumentals only from like hundreds of movies. You name it, it's in there. But like I do that on purpose because if I found myself singing along to the music, and then it's hard to concentrate on what I'm doing. But then I can play the punk playlist when it's time to color, because the color is the fun stuff for me. Everyone knows my work, knows I love color, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm like. Let's go, like.
So that's actually interesting. Are you so then? Considering you have the different playlists, Alan, like, are you that kind of artist that has to have a very particular music because you respond to it? Like, if I hear music in the background, I don't care. Like, it kind of like, okay, whatever, it's background noise. But I do know some artists.
No, I do have to have some. I do find myself if I'm kind of like what Scott was saying. If I play, the reason I stopped picking random playlists, I would do like '90s playlists. But the problem was like 3 songs would be awesome '90s musics, and then there's would be 1 song from a jacked up band that I don't know about, and then I'd be like, "What the fuck is this?"
Throws off the whole flow.
Throws me off immediately.
So Scott, you're like that too, then, with your music.
I would say it's rare that I'll turn around and hit skip or cancel on one, but I will every once in a while. But when you start getting into the deep metal, suddenly it's like there's just a lot of cool shit, heavy distorted guitars. I do like a variety. It is weird though. Sometimes if I'm in, oh shit, I gotta tighten up my shit, I'll put on some tech metal. You know what I mean? Or
you're talking like industrial metal.
No. Like technical, Polyphia is like an instrumental band that's like really tight and
okay.
Those sorts of things, right? And then other times when it's like, dude, you're too tight, you got to loosen the fuck up. Then it's like I just hit the frickin', death metal or whatever it is, like something heavier. Every once in a while, I'll go back to the '80s thrash scene and
I
just
like
kind of hit
'80s
some of
metal,
that.
man. I'm trying to think like most of them. I don't think I listen to any metal bands you do. Like I listen to like Lamb of God or
And God's great. I listen to them all the time.
trying to think bands in that era. I listen to a lot of punk though. Like you and I think you and I were talking about Against Me. I listen to like AFI, Against Me.
Yes, yes, great
Thrice.
stuff. There's one called Billy Talent. Do you know that
Oh,
band?
I love Billy Talent. Billy Talent's the
Good,
reason I bought an orange amp, man, because their guitars primarily uses an orange amp. And the first time I heard it,
Yeah.
I was just like, this thing's got a very distinct sound. And my friend was like,
Yes.
it's an orange amp. And I was like, what the fuck is an orange amp?
The other day, I was like, I started getting a little bit more into the doom metal stuff, like the sludge metal almost kind of stuff, the real heavy, sometimes referred to as stoner rock.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons is I bought a guitar. I bought a PVT 60, and those guitars are used heavily in doom metal. My buddy Ryan Lesser, I don't you know Jennifer Lesser,
Yeah, I know them.
Ryan Lesser. He worked at Rockstar Game, that kind of stuff, right? Wait, there's two. There's Rockstar, and then there's Rock Band, and then what? Rock Band, but what was the other one? Like Rock Band and
there's
Guitar Hero.
Harmonic.
Guitar Hero.
Yeah, Harmonic.
So
yeah.
So he was Harmonic. So he was the Rock Band, and he was the art director behind it. He's literally the guy who designed the first controller, like the first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, I played that game for hours.
Oh yeah. Well, many guitar players got their start their way, no doubt about it. Anyway, so he's heavy into that stuff and has been into that stuff for years and years and years and years. So we were talking about this guitar I bought because he was actually going to buy it. I found it for him. I knew he was looking. I showed him the auction, and he was like, you know what, man? It's probably going to go for more than I'm willing to spend on it, so I just wouldn't even bother. And I kept watching it, and I picked up that thing for like $120. I don't even know it was so cheap. I can't believe
that
it.
Is
and
cheap.
I got to like. I got to rub it in his face a little bit, like, dude, I got it for $120. He's like, what? Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't fucking buy it.
He's got to break into your house for it later.
Yeah, right. Well, those guitars, the Doom guys, they put aluminum necks on them. So they take the wooden neck off and they put an aluminum metal neck on them. That's kind of the jam with that, and they use that guitar.
I didn't know
quite
that.
a bit. Cool stuff, man. But yeah, so then I had a week where I was in like doom sludge metal. I bought a fuzz pedal, and I was just like. And it was awesome.
That's too heavy for me. I think it's got to have a distinct. It's like remember the first time I heard like Meshuggah, and I was like, maybe, and then my friend was explaining how like each band member plays in different counts, and what's really wild about that band is they all live in different parts of the world, so they record in their own home studios, and then they layer the tracks perfectly, and I'm just like, fuck out of here. They're Swedish black metal band, and I think a lot of Swedish black metal bands are fucking amazing, but they're so technical, and there's a point where I get lost, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening anymore. Like it's almost like Tool, I think, is the hardest I went with that level, and then it got crazy, right?
Right.
And you're like, I don't know.
I don't know. There's the whole gent thing, right? Or djent, however you want to spell it. DJENT is with it. And there's whole debates out there within the metal community. What is gent? Like, is Animals as Leader gent? Is this band gent? Who's gent? And it's interesting because it's a lot about the rhythms, and sometimes they'll play the same chord for 2 minutes. But it's like it's about the timing, and it's about the way they hit it. So they're not like they're like
yeah.
It's another thing, and I have to be in the right mindset to get into it. And when I am into it, I'm like, oh yeah, you just kind of sit back in the vibe of it. But no, I know what you mean, man. I think especially if you're used to just more melodies and that kind of stuff,
right.
You're not gonna get there.
Yeah, exactly, and that's but like I was telling you guys, I have those playlists because I think they're curated for me to work basically and keep me going, and then. Like the 1,000 song playlist is literally, it's like if I'm just like I'm gonna try to get some work done, but this is not serious work. This is just like, let's just flow, try to get some stuff going here. I'll play that list because anything that comes up on that list is like usually like every 10th song I might skip. I'm gonna be like, I'm not in the mood for this.
Yeah.
Not today, Taylor. Not today. Like keep going.
Listen, I've seen Taylor a few times, man, in concert. Taylor knows how to put up Oh, I got a freshman at college. She
That's
was
true.
prime Taylor. So I've listened to a lot of Taylor, and to this day she'll quiz us on naming the Taylor albums in order from start to finish. I can't do it. Don't
Yeah, I
ask me
can't do
to.
that.
Like I can't do it, man.
I
But
actually got into Taylor Swift because I have a friend who I will not name drop, but he's really into Taylor Swift, and it was the first male friend I had that was so into Taylor Swift, right? And I'm just like, really, Taylor Swift, huh? And then he's like, yeah, dude, she's so good, and like he would be the guy that would play her songs at the bars when we were hanging out. Like, you'd be like, I'd be playing like Billy Talent or AFI or something like that, and all of a sudden this Taylor Swift song would drop in the middle, and then you'd just see the bar looking around like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, who picked Taylor Swift? And he'd be in the corner like just vibing, and I'd be like, that dude picked it, right? So like I gave her a chance, and she can actually really write good music. I actually enjoyed it, so no shame in that game.
No, man, about Taylor. Like sometimes, like I think, like a lot of Taylor's songs, they sound like somebody else's song just enough. And then there's a deviation, right? Like, but you're like,
it could be an influence, right?
Is it a?
I want to chalk that up to like an influence rather than like a
sure,
like a straight up jacking. Like she likes this song.
In art as well, so we just tie that right back to art, man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we get all of us know we get that all day, right? Oh, this reminds me of, and you're like, cool. It took me a long time to be like, that's cool, thank you. I'd be like, fuck you, I'd be like, but now I'm like, oh, thank you, I appreciate the compliment. Obviously, you like that thing enough that my piece is channeling it. So,
yes,
we're a little over time, so I'm going to let's see. I'm trying to see if we had any other questions. Andrew, you had a question for Scott about studio stuff.
Oh yeah, that's always some of my favorite posts on Muddy Colors is whenever I see like your studio equipment like hacks and all that. And like so it's funny because like actually like going back to hobbies or whatever, that's actually how I got into woodworking. I needed to build a tabaret. At like my shitty IKEA one, I had outgrown it. And I was like, fuck, I need to make a bigger one. They cost like crap ton money though.
Sure.
And I was like, at the time, I was like, I can't afford this. So I ended up just cobbling one, adding onto it, like using some poplar from Home Depot and stuff. And it just kind of went from there. And now I'm making like picture frames for myself. I'm making furniture for the house.
Nice.
Did
it's like Bob Vila?
Yeah, I was gonna, is that one of those things where for you it started off as like one tiny little thing, and then next thing you know, you realize like I'm making like a lot of this stuff just because I kind of want to, not because I have to.
I think that definitely comes into play. I mean, I am a tinkerer by nature, and
you seem like it.
Totally.
It's art, even the way I make art, it's all about tinkering and figuring out how things work. It goes back to when I was a kid, man. Like I used to just find random bits of junk in a junkyard or in somebody's garage or whatever, and I'd put them together, and I'd screw this thing that doesn't belong to that thing, and so I've always kind of been assembler, which goes right back into the artwork. And I think it's about creating a space that is unique to the way you do your thing, right? Like right here, this is my Cintiq, right? And it's on an Ergotron arm, right? So I can put it in any position and I can rotate it. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, the Ergotron arm is just as important as the Cintiq because you have so much ability with it now. Some of it becomes from like, just the way things are. Like I had a pinched nerve. I couldn't sit anymore. I had to stand when I worked. So I got the Cintiq and I started standing a lot more as I was working. My desk over there, you guys have seen the post on Muddy Colors, but it's still hanging out, but stuff continually evolves. So this is still my light table, right? And this light table I got at a Goodwill. I hinged it on there. I don't know if it was for x-rays or what.
Oh, very nice.
That's a big light table.
Yeah, it's huge, right? It's a 24-inch surface that I can work on, which is great. So, and then usually I hook my things on that. But then I did things where like, I would take an easel and I designed an easel that I can take this off and I can hook the easel over the back of this and have a full easel for the bigger paintings, that go all the way down. We do that kind of stuff. The lights I'm using now, I was using a lot of OT lights, but they all died on me. I have these here. This is like two. There's like There's two lights here, and what these things are, man. And are those
musicians' lights?
No, they're grow lights. So like if you were
For
going to grow some
plants?
Oh,
plants,
for like plants and stuff. Yeah.
yes, and they can do like orange light or light. I'm loving these because, dude, they're on bendies. They have these long poles, and
They probably output a lot of light then too. Yeah.
they output a lot of light, and you can
Oh,
control
yeah.
them. So I can stereo. I can go on both sides of my drawing, and I got a light.
Oh.
Also great for filming, doing that kind of stuff. So that's been super cool. Finally, though, if you've seen the Buddy Colors post, I built these robot arms that are on the side of my desk out
Yes.
of monitors,
Yeah.
right? Now,
That's
the
awesome.
one on the right kept sliding down, and I was having trouble figuring out where I was going to put my my paints and stuff. So it's so simple, dude, but it's like so now this is the freaking Harbor Freight cart, right? And it's
Yeah.
the monitor arm here. And so my palette is resting on top, but it's on its own pivot point. So it gets out of the way of stuff.
That's
and because
amazing.
I use so many bottles of FW ink and acrylic paint, they're all nicely organized. It's a disaster right now because we've been doing a lot of painting. But I can organize it all. I can clean shit up really easy and stick it in there and be good to go. But I'm going to tell you right now, my best invention ever. You ready for it? I'm going to show you. I really shouldn't show you because I need to actually market this thing. It's so badass. Right there. You see this?
Is that a heater?
This is
with a seat on it?
a radiator with a 50s bicycle seat on it. I call it the heat seat, right? And like, dude, I just sit on that stuff like this, and I'm surrounded of warmth. It just surrounds me.
wife
It
would
sounds
love
so
that.
dangerous, though, man.
Oh, you know what? It doesn't mean my pants are touching it. These things don't get that hot. It's not
Sure.
burning me or anything like that. But I need a more comfortable seat in a more stable situation.
You need a banana
the
seat
wheel-
on there, straight
Had on it
across.
so many years, the wheels underneath are broken, so it doesn't roll anymore. It's just on its little wheel spikes. But anyway, that thing, man, I love that thing. That makes me happy.
Amazing.
That's fantastic.
That was a good tour of your studio.
Yeah, right.
That's
Why
awesome.
am I wasting my time with this art stuff? I could be a millionaire with a heat seat. You can already see the commercial. You put that shit in. You build a wireframe stool around it. Keeps you off the thing. You're surrounded wherever you go, whatever you're working on. You have little pictures of people knitting on the heat seat, and they're just like, "I'm so warm." Good.
Market it, man.
I know for a fact my wife would want that.
A ton of people would buy that, man. Keep your butt warm while you're working. People in the chat are already saying they'd want one too. You should just be selling it. You should just design it and sell it to the students. Done.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm sure I could. These things, they mass manufacture those heaters. You got to be able to get those cheap. You could probably find a stool somewhere that you could retrofit and just weld it on. You'd be good to go.
That's how you start. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I know it's Friday night.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'd like to have you on again someday in the future or past. No, future. Why did I say past? What's wrong with me? I'm hungry.
I mean, you got.
Go look at our old episode with Scott, like 3 months ago.
Yeah. Don't.
Now we gotta film one, and we just gotta post it and
There
say
we
that
go.
it was done before.
Well, now since this is already recorded, if you do decide to promote the heat seat and anyone tries to steal it, you can be like, it happened on Friday night, March 4th.
That's right.
On the podcast.
Here's some proof.
There's some video proof of it, so no one can steal it. And a bunch of people saw you say it. So you got a lot of witnesses. Right. But yeah, like maybe someday we can have you back on and talk about, because I think it's awesome to talk about, like, I always want to talk about art, obviously, but it's kind of nice to talk about our hobbies, and that's why I love talking about D&D and guitars tonight, which was fun. It's things we all love. But real quick, Sunday, if anyone's watching, you guys are still watching, cool. Sunday we have Armand Balthazar on at 1:00 Central. We're going to talk about storytelling and story building, basically, which I think will be a fun episode, especially if you're trying to be like a world builder of some sort. Cool. If you hang on just a second, Scott, I'm going to take us offline.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be in Smart School next week, can't wait to see you. Can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, don't forget your curse.